Imagine an empire stretching thousands of kilometers from foggy Britain to the scorching deserts of Syria. These guys had no smartphones, no satellite communications, not even the simplest telegraph. It sounds like the perfect recipe for total chaos and the immediate collapse of a vast state. But the Roman Empire managed to successfully control these colossal territories for over 1,200 years. We're all familiar with the picturesque scenes from historical films, where politicians in togas weave intricate intrigues. But Rome's real power rested not on grand speeches, but on concrete, stone, and ruthless bureaucracy. The Romans were the first to realize that victory goes not to those with sharper swords, but to those with better organized logistics. Their primary weapon of mass destruction was not the legions, but a relentless and tedious system of governance. You'll learn how ancient bureaucrats solved problems that even modern algorithms can't handle today. We'll examine the logistics, brutal taxes, and psychology of fear that held the ancient world in an iron grip. This is the story of how paperwork and standardization proved stronger than any ferocious barbarian army. But this is where the real intrigue begins. For the foundation of this absolute power lay hidden in the most unexpected places. You've surely heard the saying that all roads lead to Rome. This isn't just a beautiful metaphor, but a literal description of the most efficient logistics network of antiquity. The Romans built over 80,000 kilometers of first-class stone roads across Europe and Asia. Today's contractors can only dream of such quality, since many of these roads are still intact. Why go to such lengths to lay stones in some remote European wilderness? The answer is simple. The legions had to move at a speed that seemed like magic to local tribes. The roads made the empire seem smaller, allowing troops to be deployed to any location in a matter of weeks. Modern managers would call this supply chain optimization. The Romans called it survival. Roads were designed to be perfectly straight to minimize travel time for marching imperial troops. If a rock stood in the way, engineers cut a tunnel. If a raging river stood in the way, they immediately built a bridge. They had no satellites, yet their geometric calculations amaze even modern, experienced surveyors. They used simple wooden tools to perfectly mark out routes across rugged terrain. These stone arteries functioned only thanks to strict rules for their regular maintenance. Local residents were strictly forbidden from damaging the smooth pavement or building their homes too close to the roadside. Damaging an imperial road could easily cost them not only their property, but also their heads. It was an ancient equivalent of a road inspection, only with far more brutal and irreversible consequences. Not only soldiers traveled these routes, but also merchants, spreading Roman coins and culture. The economy boomed because safe, smooth roads drastically reduced business risks. Pirates of the Caribbean look romantic on screen, but on land, the Romans methodically and tediously wiped out all bandits. The security of trade was the solid foundation upon which the immense wealth of the entire empire stood. My legs start to ache just from the thought of long forced marches across these stone slabs. Soldiers marched 30 kilometers a day, carrying a mountain of heavy military gear. Modern trainers call this hybrid athletic training, but the legionnaires called it just another Tuesday. In the Roman army, it wasn't the most muscular who survived, but the one who could march longer than everyone else. A robust infrastructure allowed for the incredibly rapid suppression of any pockets of rebellion in the farthest reaches of the empire. As soon as an uprising broke out, an armed punitive expedition would immediately set out along the smooth roads. The rebels had no time to gather their forces before a fresh, steel-clad legion stood before them. The speed of movement deprived Rome's numerous enemies of their main advantage, the element of surprise. As a result, the system of high-quality roads became the physical embodiment of Rome's boundless and all-consuming power. Every barbarian who saw the smooth stone line stretching beyond the horizon instinctively understood the might of this state. It was a cunning psychological trick, forcing enemies to surrender even before a real bloody battle began. The road clearly told them that the legions would inevitably come, and it would be simply impossible to hide from them. The Roman transportation network proved so durable that it outlasted the empire itself by many centuries. Even during the Dark Ages, medieval merchants and knights continued to travel along these very same stone slabs. Ancient builders laid the foundation for a robust infrastructure framework upon which modern European civilization later grew. They literally transformed a wild, fragmented continent into a single, interconnected transportation network. Having perfectly smooth roads is not enough if there is no one to convey important state information along them. The Roman rapid communication system worked like a well-oiled Swiss watch, without a single glitch. They created a state postal service that became an incredibly efficient ancient counterpart to courier services. It sounds boring, but this invisible logistical web tightly bound the vast ancient world together. Along every road at regular intervals, there were horse-changing stations and comfortable inns. A courier could race day and night, simply switching from tired animals to fresh, well-rested ones. Thanks to this, urgent military dispatches could easily cover up to 80 kilometers in a single day. Today, you wait longer for a plastic case from another city than a Roman emperor waited for news from the front. But what is a commander to do if the enemy army is already advancing and there is simply no time for a horseback ride? This is where signal towers positioned along all the troubled borders of the great empire immediately came into play. By day, they transmitted emergency signals with thick smoke, and by night, they used bright fires to send simple messages. It was an ancient optical telegraph, operating at the speed of light in the literal sense of the word. The logistics of maintaining a steady supply for the army are no less mind-boggling than the postal system. The troops required thousands of tons of high-quality grain, durable leather, iron, and olive oil every single day. Planning such large-scale shipments required incredible mathematical precision and genius from the ancient quartermasters. Any error in the calculations could leave a massive army starving in the middle of hostile forest territory. If you disrupt the supply of basic food, even your most powerful and brave army will simply scatter into the woods. That is why the logistics centers of ancient Rome resembled the modern warehouses of giant global marketplaces. There, every sack of wheat and every spare iron sword was subject to the strictest bureaucratic accounting. Boring paperwork saved soldiers' lives far more effectively than the sturdiest steel armor. Trained Roman medics were also a vital part of this massive and complex logistical machine. They accompanied the troops on campaigns and quickly set up field hospitals right behind the front lines. Dirty wounds were washed with ordinary vinegar, which sounds like a strange and cheap salad dressing. But it turned out that ancient vinegar possessed excellent antibacterial properties, preventing mass infections. Interestingly, the right to use the fast imperial mail service was a huge and very rare privilege. Only high-ranking officials with special permission could take fresh horses at the stations. If an ordinary cunning person tried to illegally take advantage of the system, a most severe punishment awaited them. The state monopoly on rapid communication was yet another invisible instrument of absolute power. The high speed of information exchange allowed the suspicious emperor in Rome to tightly control local governors. If an ambitious provincial governor was plotting treason, rumors of it would reach the capital in a flash. This simple communication system functioned as a gigantic mechanism for round-the-clock surveillance of its own elites. You simply could not stage a rebellion in secret because the empire's walls literally had eyes and ears. As a result, Rome created a dense information network covering millions of square kilometers of land and sea. They had no electricity or radio waves, yet they built a complex network that pulsed with data every day. This clearly demonstrates that advanced modern technology isn't always necessary to create a large-scale system. Sometimes brilliant organization and ironclad military discipline are quite sufficient for total control. It is physically impossible to govern a vast, fragmented territory from a single center, even today. Therefore, Rome wisely divided its empire into manageable provinces, creating a strict vertical chain of direct command. Each such region was governed by a trusted governor, appointed directly from the capital by the emperor himself. Governing a province was more complicated than planning the perfect weekend with your girlfriend, as it required taking into account thousands of unpredictable details. A Roman governor was simultaneously the chief judge, commander-in-chief, and chief tax collector in his region. This colossal concentration of power seems dangerous, but Rome exercised incredibly strict control over its governors. The term of their broad powers was usually strictly limited to 1 year, or at most a few years of service. This was done specifically to prevent the official from having time to form corrupt ties and raise an armed rebellion. Imagine being sent to govern a hostile region where all the locals secretly hate you. You have only a couple of legions and an old collection of Roman laws to maintain even a semblance of order. Governors had to balance daily between harsh tax collection and preventing mass peasant revolts. If you went too far, the province would immediately erupt, and the angry emperor would quickly send for your head. That is why many shrewd governors preferred to negotiate with local elites rather than physically destroy them. They generously offered the leaders of barbarian tribes prestigious Roman titles, wealth, and access to unprecedented luxury. Yesterday's fierce enemies quickly realized that drinking wine in warm baths was more pleasant than sleeping in the mud. Ancient corruption and skillful bribery worked far more effectively than costly punitive expeditions. However, the suspicious central government never fully trusted the provinces. In every distant region, an extensive network of spies, known at the time as frumentarii, operated in secret. Initially, these people were engaged in routine grain procurement, but they quickly turned into a ruthless secret police force. They listened intently to conversations in the markets and opened other people's letters, uncovering dangerous conspiracies at an early stage. If a foolish governor did decide to secede from the empire, the ruthless system reacted instantly. Loyal, experienced legions from neighboring provinces were quickly deployed to suppress the rebellion without any lengthy orders. Rome's aggressive military doctrine called for the immediate destruction of absolutely any internal threat in its very infancy. No peace negotiations were held with traitors. Their names were simply erased from history forever. Modern giant corporations often pride themselves on their flexible, decentralized structure of regional branches. They conduct endless, expensive training sessions to teach managers independence and initiative on the ground. The Romans implemented this complex system thousands of years ago, using animal fear and greed as the main incentives. It was an extremely brutal, yet incredibly effective corporate ethic of harsh antiquity. The seamless, vertical chain of command was sustained not only by military force, but also by administrative genius on paper. Governors regularly and meticulously sent incredibly detailed reports to Rome on the state of affairs in their provinces. The emperor was fully aware of every minor crop failure or discontent in the most remote corners of his empire. This global informational superiority made this rigid system virtually invulnerable to unprepared external enemies. When we think of the famous Roman legions, we picture stern warriors with massive shields. But the surprising truth is that most of the time, these elite soldiers did not fight at all. They were the largest construction company in the ancient world, building entire new cities from scratch. The fierce Roman army not only destroyed old worlds, it methodically poured concrete to build new ones. A temporary Roman military camp was a true, unparalleled marvel of the engineering and urban planning of the time. Every night after an exhausting long march, the weary legionnaires dug a deep trench and built a sturdy wooden wall. Even if they planned to leave the next morning, a secure camp was erected according to all the strict rules. It seems like absolute madness, but such daily exhausting labor developed incredible physical endurance in the men. Many of these temporary fortified camps eventually evolved into powerful permanent stone fortresses. Around these secure fortresses, shrewd merchants, artisans, and the soldiers' own families gradually settled. This is exactly how many famous European cities sprang up out of nowhere, including today's London, Vienna, and Cologne. Your favorite old European capital most likely began as a tent camp for bored, dirty legionnaires. The army built stone aqueducts on a massive scale to reliably supply these new expanding cities with clean drinking water. The legionnaires stubbornly cut through solid rock and erected elegant arches stretching for many kilometers with a perfect mathematical slope. Fresh water flowed continuously for tens of kilometers under the gentle force of natural gravity alone. Modern professional engineers still sincerely marvel at the precision of these gigantic hydraulic structures. Why on earth would you force elite, well-trained soldiers to haul stones and mix dirty concrete in peacetime? The answer lies in simple psychology. An idle, bored soldier very quickly becomes an extremely dangerous rebel. Constant, hard physical labor maintained iron discipline and wore the legionnaires down to the point of near exhaustion. They simply had no physical strength left to discuss high politics or express dissatisfaction with their strict commanders. Clever Roman commanders understood perfectly well that a developed infrastructure secures conquered territories better than garrisons. When the local savage inhabitants suddenly gained access to clean water and safe markets, they simply stopped rebelling. Urban comforts proved to be a magnificent tool of covert subjugation, working far more gently and reliably than a sharp sword. People get used to the good life astonishingly quickly and have absolutely no desire to return to cold dugouts. Monumental engineering was a true hidden weapon of mass control in newly conquered foreign lands. You may sincerely hate the arrogant occupiers, but you'll still go wash yourself in their luxurious public baths. The Romans literally forced the barbarians to wash away centuries of grime, simultaneously integrating them into their advanced culture. It was a powerful cultural expansion, cleverly disguised as a mundane concern for personal hygiene. Interestingly, the army also mass-produced building materials for its endless needs. Roman legions owned their own massive brick factories and dusty quarries throughout conquered Europe. On many surviving ancient bricks, archaeologists still find clear stamps of specific military units. In essence, each legion was a massive, self-sufficient industrial enterprise with a full production cycle. This unique approach changed the very basic concept of war in the brutal ancient world once and for all. The Romans did not simply come, plunder foreign territory, and leave, as nomadic savage tribes usually did. They dug themselves in deep, poured solid concrete over the land, and declared it their own home. Against such a ruthless machine of infrastructural absorption, the scattered barbarians simply had no real chance. No great empire can survive for long without a continuous, abundant flow of hard cash. The pragmatic Romans understood this better than anyone, which is why they created an utterly ruthless tax collection system. But how do you keep accurate records of millions of taxpayers when you don't even have ordinary cheap paper at your disposal? They made massive use of wooden tablets coated with soft wax and expensive papyrus to maintain endless, dusty archives. The foundation of the state's unshakable financial prosperity was a regular, meticulous census, or census of property. Special, stern-faced officials scrupulously recorded every citizen, their family members, and all their acquired property. Not a single skinny cow, not a single old slave, not a single tiny plot of land escaped their keen attention. Modern tax inspectors would certainly envy such fantastic meticulousness in collecting personal data. But the actual collection of money was often handed over to the sticky hands of greedy private contractors, who were then called publicans. These guys would pay the state the required huge sum in advance, and then ruthlessly squeeze it out of the population with exorbitant interest rates. They operated like classic ancient debt collectors, not shying away from any gangster-like methods of intimidation and violence. It is no surprise that in ancient texts, these tax collectors are mentioned alongside the most notorious and vile sinners. Over time, the emperors realized that the greedy publicans were ruining the provinces too severely and too quickly. The system was radically reformed, and tax collection came under the direct, strict control of official state employees. The bureaucratic apparatus expanded instantly, spawning thousands of petty clerks, tedious archivists, and accountants. It was a veritable new army of clerks, armed with sharp styluses instead of heavy metal gladiuses. The Roman Empire's paperwork is truly astonishing in its incredible scale and obsessive attention to detail. In the dry Egyptian sands, archaeologists still find tens of thousands of perfectly preserved receipts and tax receipts. People were constantly requesting certificates for the purchase of a lame donkey, payment of duties, or permission for a business trip. It seems that the Romans successfully invented a veritable bureaucratic hell long before the advent of modern stuffy offices. This gigantic mountain of paper documents allowed the state to plan its budget with incredible precision for years to come. The emperor knew down to the gram how much grain would arrive from Egypt and how much silver slaves would extract from the mines of Spain. Based on this precise data, costly military campaigns and the grand, large-scale construction projects of the century were planned. Rome's economy was deeply and entirely planned, relying on dry and rigid statistical calculations. It is extremely interesting that taxes were collected not only in coins, but also in fresh produce. The warmer provinces regularly supplied tons of grain for free distribution to the starving poor in the overcrowded capital to prevent riots. This ingenious system was called the annona, and it was, in essence, the very first ancient social welfare program. Rome fed its aggressive, unemployed citizens to their fill at the expense of the backbreaking slave labor of conquered peoples. This entire colossal bureaucratic machine operated solely through human labor and vast archives. Information was carefully stored in special buildings, where thousands of scrolls were sorted according to a complex, multi-tiered system of categories. Searching for the right ancient tax record could take days, but the system functioned surprisingly smoothly. This proves once again that order in the administrator's mind is far more important than order in complex technologies. Ultimately, it was the army of clerks, not soldiers with swords, that became the true glue holding the empire together. The fierce legions could quickly conquer new untamed lands, but only the tedious bureaucrats could make them truly profitable. Boring people with wooden tablets for taking notes controlled this world far more reliably than great generals. War brings only a one-time bloody haul, while well-structured taxes bring incredible wealth forever. Quickly conquering dozens of completely different peoples with their unique, wild traditions is only half the grand undertaking. The real headache begins when you have to make them all live peacefully under common rules. The Celts, the proud Greeks, the Syrians, and the ancient Egyptians had completely different and sometimes wild ideas about justice. Rome desperately needed a universal tool for smooth governance, and that powerful tool became the law. The main fundamental principle of this system was that the law always stood above the personal whims of officials. Of course, run-of-the-mill corruption has always existed, but even mad emperors tried to maintain the appearance of legality in their actions. Trials were conducted as publicly as possible, and the conflicting parties could hire brilliant professional lawyers for their defense. Eloquent orators like Cicero earned enormous sums of money and eternal fame in such high-profile trials. The universality of Roman law made the empire incredibly attractive for conducting international business. A merchant from distant Spain knew with absolute certainty that a court in Syria would recognize his commercial contract as valid. Uniform, transparent rules of the game radically reduced risks and actively stimulated rapid economic growth throughout the Mediterranean. Wealthy investors always prefer stable, boring laws to the unpredictable decisions of tribal, emotional leaders. Punishments for proven crimes depended not only on the severity of the offense, but also on the status of the individual. Respected citizens of Rome could under no circumstances be subjected to humiliating executions, such as agonizing crucifixion on a wooden cross. But powerless slaves and non-citizens could fully experience the full creative cruelty of imperial justice. This legal discrimination seems appalling today, but for the harsh ancient world, it was the absolute norm. Nevertheless, Roman law never stood still. It constantly evolved and adapted to new realities. The most brilliant jurists wrote voluminous, detailed commentaries, establishing important precedents and improving old, ineffective laws. Much later, Emperor Justinian compiled all this accumulated legal chaos into a coherent, unified body of laws. This monumental code became the very solid foundation upon which the legal system of modern Europe is still based. The existence of crystal-clear laws radically reduced the level of domestic violence in the conquered provinces. Ordinary people no longer needed to stage a vendetta if a brazen neighbor secretly stole a sheep from them. They simply went to the local, bored Roman magistrate and resolved the dispute civilly with the help of paperwork and witnesses. The bureaucratization of human conflicts proved to be an excellent and the most bloodless way to keep society from self-destruction. It sounds completely unbelievable, but it was the Romans who developed the modern concept of the presumption of innocence. The heavy burden of proof always rested on the accuser, not on the frightened suspect. This seems like an absolutely basic principle today, but 2,000 years ago, it was a truly revolutionary idea. They sincerely tried to build a judicial system based on cold logic, not on the blind emotions of an enraged mob. In the end, Rome's well-thought-out laws proved far more enduring than its own indomitable legions and stone cities. The empire fell long ago and turned to dust, but law students around the world still study those old Latin terms. Laws became Rome's most successful and immortal export, outliving their creators by many millennia. Rules carved into cold stone proved stronger than any high fortress walls. How could one compel conquered barbarian peoples to voluntarily and fiercely defend the empire that had recently conquered them? The Romans found a brilliant psychological solution. They made their citizenship the most coveted prize in the entire world. Unlike the arrogant Greeks who considered everyone else to be animals, Rome was willing to share its privileges. They turned the painful process of assimilation into a large-scale political game for raising social status. Initially, only the native inhabitants of the city of Rome itself had full civil rights, which caused many conflicts. But gradually, the cunning empire began handing out passports to loyal elites in the conquered and pacified provinces. A former Gallic chieftain could become a true Roman senator if he wore a clean toga and spoke Latin fluently. It was an ancient, foolproof social ladder that turned former sworn enemies into the most loyal allies. The concepts of family and loyalty to the state meant no less to the Romans than they did to the heroes of the action movie The Fast and the Furious. Only instead of souped-up sports cars, they used heavy infantry and attractive legal privileges. Upon becoming an official citizen, a barbarian proudly took a Roman name and became part of this giant family. It turned out that a sense of belonging to a greater whole motivated people far better than animal fear. Roman citizenship offered real, very tangible benefits that were truly worth risking one's life for. It completely exempted one from certain humiliating provincial taxes and protected against the arbitrariness of corrupt local authorities. A citizen had the legal right to a fair trial in Rome and immunity from cruel corporal punishment. It was a true golden ticket to the ancient world, instantly opening the doors to all the elite clubs. The most popular and arduous way to obtain this coveted status was through long service in the auxiliary troops. A barbarian served for 25 long years, risking his life every day on the most dangerous sections of the border. If he miraculously survived, he and his children received full Roman citizenship in a plot of land. The state literally bought the blood of conquered peoples for a piece of parchment bearing the imperial seal. This cunning system created incredible motivation for hundreds of thousands of young people across wild Europe. They voluntarily went to military camps, sincerely dreaming of becoming a tiny part of the invincible imperial machine. The Roman army turned into a giant melting pot, recasting completely different tribes into a single, monolithic nation. The unwashed Germans and Syrians of yesterday called themselves true and loyal Romans with incredible pride. In 212, Emperor Caracalla made an extremely radical decision that changed the course of history forever. With a single stroke of his pen in an edict, he granted Roman citizenship to all free inhabitants of the vast empire. This was not done out of great kindness, but solely to collect more taxes. Yet this pragmatic move permanently erased the legal line between the arrogant conquerors and the conquered peoples. Integration through coveted citizenship proved to be the most powerful weapon against large-scale regional uprisings. Local provincial elites no longer wanted to destroy the system, because they themselves had come to manage and enjoy it. Why rebel against distant Rome if your son could become a great Roman general tomorrow? The empire learned to assimilate its enemies, turning them into its most fanatical and loyal defenders. Today, developed countries use exactly the same approach, luring migrants with the chance to obtain a coveted passport. The green card system operates on the very same psychological mechanisms as ancient imperial decrees. People will always be irresistibly drawn to places where the laws offer them safety and high social status. The Romans were the first to realize that ideas and privileges conquer the world far more reliably than sharp legionary swords. Imagine walking into a chain restaurant anywhere in the world and knowing exactly where the cash register is. The Romans applied this principle of strict standardization to all their structures 2,000 years before modern corporations. Wherever the legion went, it always built camps and cities according to the same approved blueprint. It was a true ancient urban planning franchise, saving a tremendous amount of time and resources. Every new Roman city featured a perfect rectangular grid of streets with two wide main avenues. In the center, there was always a bustling forum, a temple of Jupiter, a basilica for courts, and clean public baths. A soldier from warm Syria, transferred to foggy Britain, could find his way around the new city with his eyes closed. He didn't need to ask for directions, because all the key infrastructure was always in the usual places. Standardization applied not only to street layouts, but also to everyday details such as standard bricks and roof tiles. Factories across the vast empire produced building materials in strictly regulated government-mandated sizes. If your roof broke at your villa in Spain, you could easily order the perfect roof tiles from Gaul. The parts were interchangeable, which greatly simplified logistics and allowed for rapid infrastructure repairs. The legionnaires' deadly weapons and equipment were also manufactured according to uniform, strict state standards. A gladius made by a craftsman in Egypt was absolutely identical to a sword forged in the cold German forests. This made it possible to easily and quickly supply armies from any arsenal without issues of ammunition incompatibility. Mass assembly line production originated precisely in the ancient workshops that served the endless demands of war. The famous Hadrian's Wall in Britain is a perfect example of this standardized approach to defense. A small fortified fort stood every mile with tall watchtowers between them. Soldiers performed their routine duties strictly according to regulations, which were absolutely identical across all the empire's frontiers. Bureaucracy and military standards transformed chaotic guerrilla warfare into a predictable and tedious routine. Even simple water pipes in the empire had standard diameters, strictly mandated by the state. This helped meticulous officials accurately calculate water consumption and charge the cunning residents the correct fee. If you illegally connected to the aqueduct with a larger pipe, an inspector with a ruler would notice it immediately. Engineering was inextricably and firmly linked to tax control and ironclad social discipline. This mundane copy-and-paste approach allowed the Romans to urbanize wild Europe at an incredible pace. They would take an empty patch of forest and within a couple of years, transform it into a stunningly functional stone city. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel every time or hold lengthy, creative architectural competitions. They simply took a ready-made design from the archives and sent legionnaires to dig the foundation according to the blueprint. Excellent infrastructure and just laws are wonderful, but sometimes people still want freedom. The Romans were unrivaled masters not only in construction, but also in the use of mass psychological terror. The state regularly used demonstrative cruelty as a tool to prevent potential uprisings. They genuinely wanted even the tiniest thought of rebellion to instill a panic-stricken, animalistic terror in the provincials. If some tribe foolishly killed a Roman envoy or attacked an imperial patrol, the response was disproportionate. The legions did not merely seek out the guilty. They burned entire villages and sold all survivors into slavery. This was a policy of collective, brutal retribution in its most bloodthirsty and cynical form. Rome made it abundantly clear that the price of disobedience would be dozens of times greater than any potential gain. The famous uprising of the gladiator Spartacus ended with 6,000 captured slaves being crucified along the Appian Way. These mutilated bodies hung there for months on end, turning the bustling highway into a rotting exhibition of imperial justice. Any traveler heading toward the capital breathed in that stench and absorbed the brutal lesson without needing to be told. Animal fear was the most reliable glue holding the social hierarchy together against inevitable collapse. Even in the most elite army, iron discipline was maintained through incredibly brutal methods of intimidation. If a unit showed the slightest cowardice in battle, it was immediately subjected to a horrific decimation. Every 10th soldier, chosen by blind lot, was beaten to death by his own weeping comrades. After such psychological pressure, the legionnaires feared their commanders far more than enemy swords. But why, despite all this terror and flawless logistics, did mass uprisings still occur periodically? Most often, the cause was the sheer greed of Roman governors and local officials. When taxes became unbearable, people simply had nothing to lose but their heavy chains. A starving person ceases to fear crucifixion because they are already dying slowly and painfully from starvation. A striking example is the bloody uprising of Queen Boudica in Britain, which nearly cost Rome an entire province. Local corrupt officials, emboldened by their power, seized her family's lands, beat her, and humiliated her daughters. In response, the enraged British tribes razed several Roman cities, killing tens of thousands of colonists. Bureaucratic lawlessness always breeds bloody chaos, even in the most stable system of government. Another less obvious cause of the uprisings was deep and irreconcilable religious conflicts. Jewish revolts broke out regularly because the Jews categorically refused to worship statues of the emperor. The Romans, accustomed to the religious flexibility of other peoples, simply did not understand this fanaticism. As a result, they wiped Jerusalem off the face of the earth, demonstrating that the empire tolerated no compromises when it came to loyalty. It is ironic that the most dangerous uprisings were not led by barbarians, but by the most distinguished Roman generals themselves. When an ambitious general was placed in direct command of several legions, he began to dream of the throne. The armies were more loyal to their charismatic commanders than to the distant Senate or the emperor in Rome. This was a fatal systemic flaw that the empire was never able to fully eliminate until the very end. To combat internal usurpers, emperors had to massively withdraw troops from distant frontiers. This critically exposed the borders, allowing barbarian tribes to plunder defenseless border provinces with impunity. Civil wars among the elite inflicted far more irreparable damage on Rome than any external invasions. The empire methodically devoured itself in an endless and bloody struggle for the imperial purple robe. Ultimately, the system of intimidation began to fail when there were too many barbarians at the borders. It is physically impossible to crucify an entire people if they number in the hundreds of thousands of armed, fierce warriors. Fear works only when the state has the power to carry out its terrifying threat. When these military forces dried up, the illusion of Roman omnipotence dissipated like morning fog. Nothing lasts forever, not even a system built on solid concrete and the most ruthlessly sophisticated bureaucracy. The great Roman Empire was not destroyed by technology, but by banal hyperinflation and chronic political instability. The emperors began debasing the currency, reducing its silver content to pay for a massive, growing army. Money rapidly lost its value, taxes skyrocketed, and the economy simply collapsed under its own weight. Gradually, the army ceased to be truly Roman in spirit, discipline, and national composition. The legions were increasingly filled with barbarian mercenaries who couldn't care less about the ideals of the ancient state. They fought solely for gold, and when the treasury ran dry, they simply turned their backs on their employers. The system, built on integration, broke down when there were more armed wild migrants than citizens themselves. Global climate change and deadly epidemics also contributed to the giant's downfall. Terrifying plague outbreaks wiped out millions of law-abiding taxpayers, leaving entire wealthy regions deserted. The state simply had no people left to maintain its vast infrastructure or man the watchtowers. Blind nature proved stronger than the engineering genius and flawless military logistics of the ancient strategists. Would it be possible to govern a state using such Roman methods in the modern world? On the one hand, many dictatorships still try to copy this approach, relying on fear and bureaucracy. They build gigantic projects, standardize laws, and brutally suppress any dissent with police force. But in the information age, it is practically impossible to hide the system's failures and the government's inefficiency. Today's strong economy is built on constant innovation and the free exchange of bold ideas. The Roman approach, with its rigid, total standardization, stifles the creativity that is critically necessary for progress. Slave labor and the suppression of individuality worked in ancient times, but today they are a sure path to stagnation. Countries that choose the path of total control ultimately always lose the global economic race. Yet we still use many management concepts devised by ancient bureaucrats every day. The logistics of modern multinational corporations bear a striking resemblance to the supply system of the Roman legions. Passports, taxes, legal precedents, and municipal elections. All of these are living echoes of a bygone empire. We have simply replaced fragile parchment with servers and sharp gladiuses with economic sanctions. The main lesson of Rome is that the sheer scale of a system in no way guarantees its immortality. The more complex the bureaucratic apparatus becomes, the more vulnerable it is to internal crises. A huge, bloated state begins to spend absolutely all its resources solely on maintaining its own existence. And at some point, this colossal, unwieldy machine simply stalls from a lack of fuel. The Romans arrogantly believed that their empire would last forever and sincerely believed in their own exceptionalism. They considered their laws and stone roads an insurmountable barrier against the barbaric chaos of the forest. But the barbarians did not destroy the sturdy aqueducts. They simply stopped maintaining and repairing them. And the great civilization gradually and ingloriously sank into the mud and oblivion of the Dark Ages. The history of ancient Rome's governance is a brutal masterclass in logistics, ambition, and power. They vividly demonstrated to humanity how to build a gigantic, flawlessly functioning corporation out of the chaos of wild tribes. Their fatal mistakes are just as instructive as their brilliant, large-scale engineering solutions. It is a vast mirror in which modern superpowers can easily see their own reflection. We continue to sincerely admire their achievements, wandering as tourists through the ruins of the Colosseum and the Forum. But it is very important to remember that behind every beautiful marble column lay rivers of blood and mountains of tedious paperwork. Power is not just about eloquent speeches from the podium. It is the daily exhausting routine of total control. It was precisely this way, step by step, that Rome effectively ruled its world for 1,200 years. Ruling half the known world without the internet or telephones turned out to be a perfectly feasible task. Rome's secret lay not in magic or technology, but in a maniacal love of order and discipline. They compensated for the lack of communication with flawless logistics, harsh laws, and tedious paperwork. This system worked so well that we still hear its clear echo in our own governments today. The great empire fell, but its cynical methods forever changed the rules of the global political game. We still build our logistics on their principles, use their laws, and fear the very same mistakes. The Romans proved that human genius is capable of creating an incredibly complex structure out of stone and blood. And as long as their aqueducts stand, we will continue to study their amazing and terrifying experience.